I am no stranger to resin and epoxy and its molds, various molds that you can make and create and buy. You know, I have anything from the HDP hard cast welded molds all the way to the melamine tuck tape or roofing tape to the cheap Amazon super thin, you know, silicone molds. There was even a time I went and bought my own plastic and I went ahead and made my own molds. I literally cut the pieces down like you'd make a box and made my own molds. But we are here today to examine the TEMU molds. These are probably one of the most expensive things on TEMU when it comes to woodworking or resin or epoxy. Minus, you know, TEMU does sell actual epoxy, pigments, mixers, molds, etc. But I've been eyeballing a mold like this, just like this, for years because I thought it was always interesting to have this unique handle and an easy way to just make product. So today we're gonna do just that. I have some red cedar that I've had in the shop for years that we're finally gonna use, mix it with some colored epoxy and use this mold. And I'm gonna see if this mold, you know, one, demolds easily. It doesn't stick to the epoxy or the hardener. It doesn't weld to the epoxy or the hardener like in a chemical reaction. And see if I can make something. So let's go through the trials and tribulations of that product. The cost of it, one, was a great factor. Usually this kind of mold will run you 100 to maybe 150 at a normal name brand store, but I got it on TEMU for 67 or 60 something dollars, and it was a steal that I just could not pass up. So let's go through the process of making it. We're gonna cut the cedar down, fit it into the mold, glue it down into the mold, or maybe just add a base layer, and then pick our pigments and run with it. Let's go.
This is the best part of any epoxy project, the commingling or the pouring of the actual epoxy. I chose Diamond, Battleship Gray, and Emerald Green as my two colors because I wanted to do something different. These two colors I've used in the past and they always yielded awesome colors. There's just something so satisfying about the mix of the epoxy. So I'm using a deep set pour epoxy because I have it and I've had it in the garage for a couple years now, so I needed to really use it on this project. There are a lot of methods that you can use to measure how much epoxy you need, from the rice method that you can find on YouTube to just calculating it with dimensions and other things like that. Since this project was oblong or oddly shaped, I kind of just guesstimated from my experience on how much epoxy I needed. In theory, and based off the thickness of the cedar that I had, I think it was 1¼ inch cedar, or even 1.5 inch, and it required a lot of epoxy to get this anywhere remotely close to being full. So this is the second batch, or four total cups of mixed epoxy, and here I decided to just end because I was like starting to get to a point where the epoxy was starting to float the wood, and that's just not how I wanted to go. So I checked it again, noticed it was floating. The handle pieces were especially moving already, and I noticed I had to figure out a way to prevent that. So I attached boards to it and clamped it all down and let it sit for the 24-hour period. I did come and check on it every now and then to remove the excess bubbles. In order not to waste the epoxy, I actually grabbed what was left and decided to just pour it in. Whatever happened, happened, and I noticed it was definitely floating the wood, and I had plenty of room left in the mold. If anything, it was going to shrink. I wasn't going to have any heating issues or floating issues or anything like that, so I just put it in and I let the epoxy sit for a moment. You can actually see me check the level of the board because I have a significant amount of gray moving downward or towards the green. Now this is an 1.25 inch thick pour, and it could just be floating underneath, up and around. It could be going at various different spots. So I just checked the level, it was good, and then I made sure the epoxy was all set, left it alone, and this is where we are now. Every hour I came back and I made sure I popped the bubbles with the heat gun. The mold stood up perfectly, it had no issues with the heat gun, and then I made sure to swirl my epoxy for that swirl effect. Standard epoxy or colored epoxy by itself is cool, but I enjoy swirling my epoxy.
All right, this thing has been curing for 72 plus hours now, so we're gonna see how the mold held up. Obviously I have some support pieces here because the cedar was floating because it is a very soft wood, but I'm just gonna get right into it. It really did hold up in terms of like thickness. I think it's gonna be fine, but let's just. Interesting, what is that? So, I don't know if the camera can actually pick that up. I'm gonna try and show you what that is. So if you look at those lines, I tried to super glue the wood thinking maybe the cedar would attach to the silicone, and clearly it didn't, but now it's left a mark in there. I don't think, it almost looks like it burnt it. They went through the silicone and absorbed into the silicone. It doesn't appear to have made any issues. Actually, it did create some holes here in the silicone. You can see those holes. Those are definitely holes. It's interesting. So all in all, I mean, if you can get a couple boards out of this silicone mold, I think you would make your money back, no problem. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I was hoping this mold was going to create a product that I didn't have to like do anything to. Let's just jump right into cleaning this board up and showing it off. I am excited to actually have it. It's going to be a thickum, if you can tell, but it's going to be a nice thick serving board. But it does need some TLC. But in terms of the mold itself, you know, like I said, you get your you get your money out. It's only $67. So if you, let's say, made 3 of these boards and that's all you can get out of it, you would definitely make your money back on this mold. Is it worth the silicone? I don't know. The silicone really didn't stand up too well, but I think it's more for speculation. It really depends on how many of these I can make. I can definitely get at least one more. You know, even if there are holes here, I can salvage it by putting tuck tape or silicone in those holes and preventing it. Like I said, I was hoping that I would have a finished product after the demold, but clearly, even if I had a perfect pour, I still don't have what I wanted. So let's go through the motions of cleaning this thing up and we'll go from there. And then maybe I'll have some final thoughts and a finished product to show y'all. Thanks. let's get down to business. Buying a mold or a resin mold off of TEMU is probably the best decision you can make as a DIYer or someone getting into the resin industry. I can't stress enough how much money you're going to save by just giving TEMU a shot and spending the money on the identical mold that you would get from a name brand store. I get it. Name brand stores have to make money and TEMU is a ripoff of those name brand stores. I get it. But for someone who just wants to get into it and craft and get into the arts and magic of crafting, go shop on TEMU. I am not sponsored by TEMU, but to get something like this for $60 something, I think it's on there for $50 something right now, is a steal. So with that, yes, my mold took some damage from the glue. That was user error. I've never experienced that before, so whatever. Will I use it again? Yes. But for it to be able to create projects or product like this, where all I did was add wood, resin, and I have the tools to clean it up, why wouldn't you do it? It's the best decision you can make if you want to get into experimenting with resin and wood. If you liked what you saw here today, consider subscribing. Leave a like on this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!